If you've ever been to the range and you can't hit shit, even though you supposedly mounted your optic properly, you probably didn't. Today, we're gonna talk a little bit about how to mount your LPVO properly. I'm over here at the workbench and I'm ready to start mounting my LPVO, and a couple things that I brought to make sure I've got everything I need are my mount, my optic. In this case, this is a Warhorse 1-6. I've got a level, tools I need to screw everything together, and then I also have a torque wrench. We are ready to start mounting the LPVO, and so the first thing I've done here is I have put my upper receiver into the vise. I'm using a reaction rod to hold everything together. We usually use that to install barrels, but it also works great for this purpose. And so the first thing I'm gonna do is take my level and start to confirm that my upper receiver is level. And so I will just place this in a couple of positions along the upper receiver rail, just to verify that the surface that I am working with is level. Awesome, we are good to go. The next thing I'm gonna do is take the lower portion of my mount and I am going to set it on my upper receiver. This isn't gonna be the last place it goes. I am also gonna take my optic, gently set it in here and just get an idea of where that sits. And what I'm looking for here ultimately is to make sure that the ocular lens, or the big part, whatever you wanna call it, of the optic is over my charging handles. The charging handle isn't in here, but it would be right there. And so I just want to verify that this piece is over my charging handle, and that'll give me a good starting point. Once I've confirmed that my optic is in a good spot with where the mount is sitting on the Picatinny rail, I can now take this off again, and then I'm going to tighten this down. We're going to use the German torque specs good and tight. Okay, and we're good to go there. You can torque these down to about 28 inch-pounds. If you feel like it, nice and tight is also good. The next step I'm gonna take once I have the lower part of my cantilever mount on my rail is I'm now gonna take the optic, place it inside. Again, we already confirmed that this is in the right spot, so we're good to go. And then before I start actually leveling stuff, because this is easy to bump and shift, I am going to take the top two portions of my Picatinny mount. I'm going to drop them down on top, and I am going to get these screwed in. And when I say loosely tighten, I mean very loosely tighten, just enough to hold the optic in place. Once I have the top pieces of those mounts loosely screwed in, the next thing I'm going to do, and this is personal preference, is I'm going to take this top turret off. So I am going to undo the top portion of our push-pull locking turret. This is how you would normally reset your turret to 0 after you've zeroed your optic. But I'm going to take this off, and under this I've got this gold piece, and this is what I'm going to use to rest my level on to ensure that I am getting a good reading of my level for my optic. Since we've already confirmed that our upper receiver is level, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my level and set it on top of my optic, and this is going to now allow me to make sure that not only is my upper receiver leveled, but my optic is leveled. And so since I have this loosely screwed in, it takes a little bit more effort, but I can make very small adjustments to the optic, rotating inside the rings, and verify here that we are looking good and that this is nice and level. And obviously we don't have multiple points to check with, but because we took the top piece of that turret off, it helps us get a more precise reading. And so once I've confirmed here that the optic looks good in the mount and it's leveled, I can gently take this off. And then the next piece I'm gonna do, and I'm using our little included tool, all of our optics have one of these in the box, screws inside the mount. I'm going to very gently tighten this down just enough to prevent that optic from moving inside the mount, since I've already confirmed it's level and I do not want it to change. This is very imprecise, and that is okay, because like I said, I am barely tightening these down just enough so that it doesn't get bumped or move for the next step of the process. Once we've tightened these down just enough that this no longer moves inside the mount, that's when we're going to grab our torque wrench, and this is when we're going to torque down these screws on the top here. Another important thing to note is it's best to try and even out the gap. So each ring doesn't really make a full circle all the way around the optic. There's going to be a slight gap inside here on each side, and the best thing we can do is just try and make sure that each of those gaps is even on each side. We've loosely tightened down everything, and now we're going to torque it down. I'm going to set this thing to 20 inch pounds. That's what we recommend for our mounts. Make sure that you're using inch pounds in your torque wrench and not foot pounds. They are very different, and we do not take any liability for what happens if you try and use a foot pounds torque wrench on your optic. And then first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start torquing each one of these down. I'm gonna go catty corner to each one on each side. So the way I like to do this is start with one, get all the way down. There we go. Then I'm gonna go catty corner to that. That one's good. And then I'm gonna move up to the front side and do the same 2 screws. Okay, and now I'm gonna hit the other 2 screws on each side that I didn't hit the first time. Awesome. Now that every single one's had it, I can go through a second time and redo it if I want to. Not necessary, but you can if you'd like. Last thing I'm gonna do is reset my turret. Since now that this is not gonna move at all, I can confirm, I can put it back on. Screw that sucker back down. Use the included tool, and you are all set. Now I can take my receiver off, and now I've got an LPVO that is correctly mounted, it's leveled, we're ready to take it to the range and get it zeroed.